Hello and welcome back to Making It. My name is Mirabelle, and today we have Stephen Letnes on the podcast. I first met Stephen last year at the Vancouver International Film Festival AMP Accelerator Program. Not sponsored, but I feel like based on how many times I've said this season, I met so-and-so at VIFF last year, I think I should be. Stephen is a film composer who has worked on various short films, documentaries, feature films, and he is a huge advocate for this disabled community as he is a blind composer. So we talk a lot about that in this episode, the advocacy work he does with his organizations, which includes Able Artist Foundation, 1 in 4 Coalition, and Ramped, recording artists and musicians with disabilities, and links will be in the description for all of these. We dive into communication, whether that's with a director or filmmaker or just in general. I think we explored a lot of interpersonal relationships in this episode and how that affects the industry and the way that we work. We get into validation and imposter syndrome, all super important topics, I think, as it sheds light on how different individuals react to these things. I think through the talk that Stephen did at VIFF, and throughout this episode, getting to talk to him and getting to know him more, it's opened up my perspective on disabilities and musicians with disabilities and all of that, because I think as a society, we tend to shy away from people who are different from us, right? So of course, we get into all of this in the episode, but having talked to Stephen about not only music, which is the thing that connected us in the first place, but learning more about all of this was very insightful. Anyway, if you couldn't tell from this introduction, this episode is pretty packed and it is a longer one, so I hope you enjoy. And as always, please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, or follow Making It on all the socials. I'm posting daily clips on everything, everywhere, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. I've also seen that Spotify has this Q&A thing that you can respond to, but I have no idea how that works. But if you'd like to help test it out, I would love that. Okay, enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen. Welcome to Making It.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I have met a lot of the season's guests from VIFF, a lot of the composers who gave panels and the breakout sessions and everything. And you did that also. You were there.
I was. It was a great trip.
It was a great one. It was a great talk with everybody. It was a good town hall discussion type thing, and it made me kind of emotional for some reason. I can't really nail why, but it made me really emotional and inspired to hear from you guys and hear about all of your experiences. So that was cool.
So you found the town hall emotional that me and Hamish and Hamish and John that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional. Tell me.
Emotional.
What was emotional about it? Because I was pretty ginned up, I was pretty enthused to be there with everybody. But what did you find about that? Did you ever identify that?
I was thinking maybe just because how open you guys are about your experiences, and talking so much about your experiences aside from like the process of film composing, because we got a lot of that as well, it was really helpful. But hearing about the disabilities and the grief and the loss and the struggles that you guys are going through, but also like how that never stopped any of you to get to where you are now. So it seems like we could do it too, right?
Yep. It's I've often heard a number of composers say last person standing, but I tend to, it's last person working, really. It's, I don't know. There are a few ways we could go down that, but I felt for the folks telling their stories, and I really liked that there seemed to be an abundance of questions
Oh, yes.
from the composers in the audience, because that's how do you verify engagement? And so it's nice to have so many people activated and open. I mean, I couldn't believe how many people revealed their disability in that town hall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power, in my opinion. I mean, that's the power of vulnerability and removing stigma that disability somehow to some people they think is bad.
Yeah.
It's a part of you. And it makes for different interesting challenges. But, there's no candor is something that I think is needed, especially in like these post-production worlds of music, composing, visual effects, editing. It's just there's so little candor and there's a lot of fluff out there about shooting for the stars, and if you can dream big, you can be it. And all these. Before I get into it, I'll just say it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of just digging in the dirt. But maybe we could find another area, because I don't think that's where you were going with that question, were you?
Well, I don't know. It goes wherever it goes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's also part of it, just to see where the conversation goes, because I think I can start off with a question or start off with a topic, but, wherever it takes us is where it goes. It's exciting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad you found the town hall valuable and emotional, rather than just pipe dreams and just, kind of, well, what would you put it? Just, it's like there are too many composers out there who either pretend no one else can do it, like they really preserve their position, which is no good. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad you did. Let me just end there. I'm a little scatterbrained today.
Oh, good. Yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah. Curious to know, like, you are legally blind, right? You are a blind composer. And as you were saying, with like the stigma around disabilities, I think lots of people would just assume that being blind may be the biggest obstacle or adversity you've had to face. But is that true? Or maybe are there other things? How's your journey been?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been thinking a lot about the journey, because in all these meetings, whether they're music related, film related, industry related, disability rights related within the industries which I work, there seems to be this notion from people that if they identify the one thing or the one person or the one rule, the one bit of info, that not that you'll win, but that the floodgates will open and things will be clearer. And it's sad to say, it's nothing like that. It's never like that, and it's not supposed to be. And I don't know how those dreams like that come up, but like I was having a conversation about a film that we're one of my organizations is supporting, and it's a film related to disabilities coming out in March, and it's a Woody Harrelson film, and they were looking at us to like, hey, this, it has to do with disability. Can you take a look? And we were evaluating, well, what could we do with this, and just what our role is. And there's no one thing that's going to make something successful. Okay, how can I put this? Because this has been on my brain, Mirabelle. It's been on my brain because, like, as a composer with a disability, I'm blind. 92% of people classified as blind have some type of usable vision. It's about 8% of blind people who do not have any usable vision at all. And part of the reason why I think I was looking for, kind of singular answers, singular solutions was because a lot of the time I get tired because as a blind guy, I live in a world that wasn't made for me. And so like I get exhausted, exhausted is a harsh word, but like even just going, I live downtown in Minneapolis, and even going downtown and crossing a few streets or walking through the buildings is just, it's more brain power than I want to put on something. It's like, it's a efficiency. As composers, as you know, we work efficiently. And there are certain challenges with some disabilities that make efficiency rather challenging. And so when I was getting into film, I certainly didn't think it was easy, but I always kind of hoped that there was that one person out there who had just that one nugget that would, she would open my eyes to, oh, so this is how the industry kind of works, and that the flowers would bloom and it just, it's dirty, it's yucky, it is a what is the word? It's a conjunction, it's a team effort within yourself. It's like all these pieces, it's a jigsaw puzzle, and like everybody's looking to identify what, composers, what's their journey, because maybe I can mimic that when, nobody should be doing any of that. What younger composers should be doing, or starting composers, because I didn't start when I was super young, was, okay, that piece from Hans Zimmer is very valuable. Nothing in my life is like his, and I don't need it to be. Or, oh, I like that Pinar does this really cool thing with her MIDI editing. I'm going to use that in my basket. And I just think there's this we superimpose ourselves onto people in positions where we want to be. And it's just, I think it's too narrow a field to think that way. It's just, Mirabelle, your journey is going to be yours. I mean, I think, my journey's mine. I was just thinking about this as I was picking up a package from the mailroom. I was like, Hollywood runs differently inside than, I think certain people might see from the outside. And it's run, they're Fortune 500. It's business. And so it's like we have this image of Hollywood, we have this image of what it's like to be a composer, to work in the industry, and there's some luxuries there. But as we all know, it's a lot of tough work. But it's like we're not taught which way we should be. There's the outside composer and the inside composer, and then the in Hollywood composer.
Wait, what do you mean by outside and inside?
Well, I think, when I guess I can put this in the way I started. When I started, I was looking for, maybe I could follow a Dean Ogden's journey or Brian Ralston's journey, because that seems kind of similar. Or, this person wasn't from LA, so I can do it like they did. And it doesn't work that way. I'm from Minnesota. I knew no one in the business. I have no mentors. I have no education for music in undergraduate work. I have no master's degree. I haven't been an assistant for any A-listers. I haven't worked on games. I haven't done any of that. That is a typical whatever, right? And so we have this idea of what we think we should do, and then maybe we get a piece of how things work as we get more experience. But then when you get into a studio, like in independent film, you get a feel for, okay, this is how independent film works. All right, I'm getting myself, I'm gathering, okay, independent film, budget's challenge. We have to be a Jack or Jill of all trades when it comes to indie films and do multiple things. And then now I haven't worked in the studio system, but I know studio composers, and I work with the studios themselves, for my disability advocacy, which is something we could get into. But it's once you see it from the other side, from a boardroom, from a pitch meeting room, from the presentations or the ridiculous amount of Zoom meetings that you and me and everybody in LA has. Everybody in the industry has these dull Zoom meetings. You begin to realize, oh, I haven't been trained to work in corporate America.
Yeah.
And we got into composing not to work in corporate America.
Yeah.
So there's an irony. There's almost like a couple levels of learning that you must allow yourself to be ready to experience. And I think last person to and I don't like last person standing thing because there are tons of wheelchair users, and I try not to be ableist as much as I can. Like the last person to make it, I think not only does it have to do with time, but tiers, Tiers, tiers of experience, and how much you're willing to retrain yourself to learn, oh, okay, well, this level is more casual. Oh, this level is a little more formal. This level, oh, this is a weird level. This is where the parties happen. And then, oh, this is the level where everybody dresses nice, but you have to get right to business because nobody has time for garbage.
Right.
And I think it's you must be willing to not only expand your tools as a composer, but also how do you deal with corporate Hollywood? How do you deal with independent films? How do you deal with film festivals? How do you deal with production as opposed to your friend and she hires you because like she's got $5,000, but she needs you to write the music and mix the music and do a little isotope RXing of the dialogue because the train went by. So you must be adaptable and understand that you must be ready to switch. And then you add disability onto that, and that adds some layers. And so I think for disabled people working in this industry, I understand we're all looking for clean lines, smooth tracks in some areas to help ease the journey. But it's just not going to be. Well, like Tony, like it was great. Speaking of Vancouver International Film Festival, I just had a meeting with Tony.
I got to get Tony on here. He's been mentioned so often.
Oh, has he? From the composers that you've interviewed?
Yep.
Yep. He's a great guy, and I just had a meeting with him yesterday. And it's I love that guy. Sony's great. VIFF is great. Are you going to go back this year?
Probably if I can. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They pick like it's a limited. Like they have a number of spots. That's right.
Yeah, it's true. Also, it's just months and months away, so I haven't even thought about it yet.
Well, where are you from?
Alberta.
Okay. Got it. Well, it'd be cool. It'd be nice if you're there and see some faces. And I mean, hopefully I go. I mean, we're already discussing that I'll be back.
Oh, sweet.
And we're looking at just what we can do differently to expand VIFF to be more accessible, especially for composers with disabilities, because that's my fight. That's my job.
Yeah. When you talked about how they brought you onto this team for this film surrounding disabilities thing, do you feel pressure to have to represent all disabled people well for that job? Do you feel any sort of pressure in that way?
Yes. And I'm not the only one. It's something that I coined this phrase like a bunch of years ago, but I feel like disabled people are reluctant ambassadors. That no matter what, no matter where we go, whether I'm getting my whole bean coffee ground, and working with the person behind the counter, or ordering a meal, or just anything, even pretending like this. Like right now, I'm pretending to see you on screen so that your viewers can see my full face. Such as it is, folks. Sorry. This is where my hand is. That's where I got to be to see you clearly on my screen.
I see.
I got to be an inch or two away to see like, oh, your hair seems dark. Okay, sweet, peace. I got to be super close to my screen. So yeah, it's exhausting because you might be the only person with a disability that person runs into for years or ever. I didn't have actually, I didn't know if I had any disabled friends for a long time because a lot of people would hide it. And I was everybody's disabled friend, right? And so, yeah, I felt like I had to represent, okay, so this is when they see Steve or when they talk to Steve, well, it's blind Steve. So, I have to kind of be a little diplomatic. I guess tiring, yeah. But that's also why I've become more of a direct communicator. One of the things that I got a lot of composers from VIFF AMP to come up to me and say, hey, I appreciate your brutal honesty. Brutally honest, Steve. I really appreciated that you said that. And I was thankful because, you're spending 6 days with strangers and hopefully what you have to say is of some value. And then all the money Sony spent to fly, us up there, is it worth it? Where is there value? But it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way because everybody would say, you're brutally honest. And I'm like, why is it brutal? Why does it have to be a backhanded compliment, right?
Oh.
And I thought about it. And I seriously thought about all those comments for weeks. And I realized, oh, I know why. And I was talking to a friend of mine. She's a psychiatrist, clinical psychiatrist. And she said, Steve, you're not brutally honest. You call it direct communicator. And I explained to her, I am a direct communicator because with limited sight, oftentimes all I'm going to have are your words, Mirabelle.
Right. I'm
not going to have your winks, your smirks, your side eye, when's this dude going to shut up? I don't have often those cues to tell me, all right, back off, Steve. You can settle down. Time for someone else. And so I like to use a lot of plain language and borderline aggressive language that you heard because I need people to understand this is how I communicate because I need you to communicate in a similar way so I do not misunderstand you one bit.
That's interesting.
It's just what I have to go on. But also, in my opinion, as somebody with a disability in this industry, I also operate as a direct communicator out of an abundance of urgency.
Yeah.
We don't have time to goof off all the time. We don't have time to just be too casual about stuff. And so direct communication is the quickest way I know how to get from point A to point B so I can get the job done, get paid, doing what I love and advocating for disability in Hollywood. It's urgency is another part of direct communication. But the primary reason why I'm a direct communicator is truly because all I have are your words. If I can get you to match kind of how I speak, I know I'll be able to match what you want from me.
Yeah, I've never thought about that before because there are so many subtleties in when you're communicating with somebody and the facial expressions and the body language and all of that. And yeah, you're right. I've never really thought about that.
Well, I mean, it's we all think on different things, and I just had a ton of years to sit and stew on this about whether I like it or not, Mirabelle.
Yeah. Has that ever caused any sort of conflict when working with a director or somebody who might not understand that that's what you need from them and that's how you communicate?
No, because I'm a really good diplomatic direct communicator.
Yeah.
Because direct communicator doesn't necessarily mean brutal honesty.
Yeah.
It just means economy of words, choosing which words. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of corporate speak in the business, which just drives me nuts. But it's just like let's circle back or let's table that. And we all kind of know what that means, kind of, but also we all have our own version of what that might mean. And so if I can stay away from words like that when I'm talking with somebody who's interested in hiring me, I will. Or instead of saying, let's table that, I'll say, well, how about we talk about this at our next meeting in a week? So that there are multiple points of clarity, multiple points of clarification. You know, like, I don't know, like as I see composing as a counselor. You know, is that how, when I say that, I heard that in your voice. What did that make you think of? You seem to respond to that.
I was more interested to hear what you had to say about that.
Oh, okay. It just sounded like you had this like, oh yeah.
Actually, this happens a lot where I say something and I guess the intonation of it is, or the inflection is a certain way that it's perceived by others differently than how I thought it was presented.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Just that just now reminded me of that. Where sometimes that happens where, something that I say might be a question and they're like, they thought it was an answer, or I have like an end to a phrase, but I end it with it going up. So it sounds like a question, but I didn't mean for it to be a question. It just happens.
It does. Well, it's in all parts of the world. I mean, it's like in Minnesota, the way we say things, might have certain connotations or, it's just regional, just fun with dialects.
Yeah. No, but I was thinking like as soon as you mentioned, you think of composing as like a counselor, my brain just started going off about like, how might that be?
Well, sure. Well, I'm also imposing in another life, I would have liked to have been either a psychiatrist or a hostage negotiator.
Oh, wow.
And like, and I'm not kidding. Like I understanding both sides and coming to an accord. Like that is fun for me to see why people don't get along or people are arguing and see where the common ground is.
I see.
But like when you're talking to a director and they don't know the language of music, like it's you're looking for keywords and you're looking for what they're saying through what they're not saying. There's a lot of that. Like some directors are really good at saying what they're actually putting on screen, and some are letting their art speak for them, right? Which is what I think some composers feel like. Well, the music speaks on my behalf because I don't like to jump out and talk and be a big communicator. And so it's the same thing happens with other people in certain productions. And so you have to understand their language. If you're ever not sure about something, always be prepared with an open-ended question. Make sure they're talking more than you. They're looking for information from you, but I've always found the desired result to be, in film anyway, you're really interviewing them to help them understand where they're coming from. They think they're interviewing you, but you're interviewing them how you're going to work with them, because they may not have the language. And so you need to, again, have multiple points of contact. Can you ask a certain question a couple different ways to get a better answer? Because if they don't know the language of music, you need to understand what they mean. And it's like, here's an example. I worked on a project a couple years ago. It was only like a 15-minute short film. And the people who hired me said, we don't want any melody. We don't want orchestra. We want hybrid. We want sound design, that kind of stuff. And so I delivered to them most of what they wanted, but I knew this wasn't right because what they thought of their film was the story arc of the film was not who they think the story arc of the film was.
Oh.
And now, this is in my opinion of watching this. Because you understand that, okay, you're serving a director, producer's vision for what they want for the film, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that they know what that is. And what I'm getting at is, Mirabel, you have experience too. And you might watch a film and say, okay, they think this person is the real, steals the show. But I'm looking at this and I think the other person is stealing the show, and I can't square the whole. They want all this music for this other person, and I think the music belongs over here. And they're hiring you for your experience and for your opinions, not for you to be the person to just dump some MIDI under their score. If that's just going to go straight to, straight to their own personal website as a reel. So you also need to know when to go away and just not take a job. And that's why I always ask more questions than they do. And I always make sure they're talking more than I am. Do you have
a set of questions that you always ask?
Nope.
It's different depending on every different person, different project.
Yep. Everybody's different. Depends on how we came across one another. Is it a connection? I mean, I've had people cold email me for jobs, but that's rare. That is so ridiculously rare. I remember once Matt Bowdler from The Unfinished. Do you use or do you know who The Unfinished is?
I do not.
Okay. Well, he's a big synth programmer guy. He's amazing. And Matt Bowdler, I remember like 7-10 years ago, he said, I've never gotten I would go to theaters and I would sit and see my name come up on the screen. I thought, man, I'm going to get so much work from this. And he's like, I have never gotten work from having my name in credits. It just doesn't happen. And it doesn't. I have never, ever gotten a job because somebody saw my name on a card in a film. Or it's rare. That's not, I should say, it is... In my experience, and I think that's what I need to preface every answer. That's not how it works. It's always through networking, connecting, working on other stuff, supporting people in other ways. It doesn't even have to be through composing, but you get, one of my favorite people to work with. I knew them for 4 years before, I got to work on a project with them.
Oh, wow.
So it was a slow burn. And a lot of people in the industry are that way. Like one of my best buddies, he's a picture editor, and he got a call 2 years after he met one person from the Editors Guild in Hollywood to work on a feature because the guy remembered him and just they liked him, and so they just remembered and called him after 2 years. It's like, just because you know people in the business doesn't mean you get jobs.
Right.
It's like, that's what everybody thinks. Well, if I know this person, I can get in the door here. They're going to open the door for me.
No.
It is nothing like that. So,
how did you? Because did you say you grew up in Minneapolis? Is that where?
Well, it's where I live. I'm from Minnesota.
Okay, yeah. Well, like how? Because I mean, I don't know what the music scene or the film scene is like there, but would it be wrong to assume it's not huge?
Almost none of my work comes from Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just curious, like how you went about networking then, if that's such a huge part of this industry.
Everybody's going to be different. And I mean, I first started with, going on the VI controls and Scorecast, whatever is, I don't know if they still have those. I know they have VI control. Do you visit any composer forums or Discords or anything like that?
No, I only in the last year joined the Screen Composers Guild of Canada. and like have been slowly finding some different organizations and stuff, but no, I haven't really been in any of those.
Good. Don't. And what I mean by that is, I mean, don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of time on those, but I didn't engage a lot. I was a lurker because I didn't want to get bogged down in talking gear, which string library is the best, who has the best, mixed bus chain, and get into arguments with people half my age who are going to tell me I'm an idiot because I put my brick wall limiter before such and such. So it's like I go on, I get the information I need, and I buzz off because I'm not looking to work with other composers.
Right.
I'm looking to work with directors and producers. I have very few composer friends. So, and it's fine to have, community. I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, my perspective. I have way more people in the film industry who work in management, agents, studios, producers, directors, and I know a lot of them who have a disability. And so, like, my community is disability.
I see.
Because that's where I knew I could do the most good. I couldn't do the most good as a composer in the composer community. Because there's nobody like me out there, or who I thought. I thought there was nobody out there. And so, like, why am I going to go to these groups when, like, man, my screen magnifier on Windows 10 sucks when I'm using Cubase version 11.2. Like, hey, anybody familiar with accessible technology can help me with why this happens?
Right.
Nobody has ever been able to answer my own questions about accessibility tools when it comes to music because they're not out there. Right. Where are the I mean, there's not a ton of accessible stuff out there even. I mean, nobody makes a GUI. Nobody makes a OXM Native Instruments Complete Control. There are very few interfaces that are screen reader accessible. Now, I don't need a screen reader all the time, but sometimes it'd be nice. Yeah. Because it's a pain in the butt, and everybody thinks they have the most ingenious GUIs for their data. I'm like, this is stupid. This is like, everybody thinks they're smart, and I just need to streamline my work. And all these cited developers of sample libraries are just willy-nilly, and I really could use some streamlining to help my work.
Yeah. Yeah, curious how you work around DAWs and stuff then.
Well, it just sometimes it takes a little more time. As you know, like, it's for composers, writing music's only like 5% of your work. So the rest of it's editing and spotting and redoing and revisions and the actual melody writing, takes 10 minutes. Like it's just it doesn't take long. Or it doesn't have to take long before the other borderline administrative composer work kicks in.
Yeah.
But you just, however you need to, you get efficient with your tools. I've got, stuff just muscle memory, and I don't have to look at stuff to do stuff to help me out. But I want to go back to this other thing about composing. Like, people, like, if that's your team, that's your team. Like, hang out with your composer friends. I just realized there wasn't anybody out there who would understand what I was going through in the composer world, but there were people in the disability world, and so I have those types of friends because, like, when I was up at VIFF, Sony, like, they flew up like 20 different working composers, right?
Yeah.
I spent time with one of them.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. It was the documentary writer. What's her name?
Miriam?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had her on this season of the podcast too.
I did. Sweet. Oh, she's great.
Yeah. That's awesome.
We had like this composer dinner, and I was busy talking to Tony during this dinner and the head of the film festival to make the film festival accessible for people with disabilities. I was like, well, hey, how is VIFF with accessibility?
Yeah.
Right? So even though I'm there to work to mentor and support you and others, I'm still there, two-fisting it with, hey, not only am I here to support underrepresented composers, but also I need to make this festival more accessible for disabled people. So like I don't want to make time for people that won't help me get the job done. Not where I need to go, but to where the job needs to get done. But if that's your group, that's your group. But just remember, they're not paying you. Composers aren't paying you.
It's true.
Where's the network for those people? So do you get involved? Like this goes back to your original question. Well, how the heck did you network, Steve? You don't know anybody, and well, in Minnesota. And what happened was all my work is from elsewhere. And so I did some 48-hour film festivals. Yeah, I did a couple tiny, local things. But the substantive work that I did was from LA, Atlanta, overseas, and a friend of mine. How do I put this? A friend of mine married somebody who was. They had a couple roles, but they weren't like a working actor, and they had an acting school. So they were teaching kids how to act. And so that's how I cut my teeth, was short films, just writing 2 minutes of music for a 5-minute short film and then doing that 30 times in a couple weeks. So
wow.
That's how you cut your teeth, and all the while you're working on those, and over years you just get connected with other people and just working on other jobs, because you don't have to compose on each film. You could be like, oh, you don't need a composer. Oh, well, what would you like support with? How can I help you? Oh, yeah, I can carry your lights. Sure, I'd love to come on set. Let me help you this way. Have you ever done that before up in Alberta? To work on stuff, if you want a gig but they don't need you, you're like, still, hey, I still want to do this. Do you find other ways in, Mirabel?
Yeah, I was a cam op for a friend's little production last year. I was gonna say recently, but it's been a while. But yeah, I was on set and helping operate some cameras. Not doing music necessarily, but also getting involved in a film in that way. Yeah.
And did you find did that yield anything yet, or does that connection continue to this day with somebody you're associated with?
Yeah, it's gotten me some of my own filming gigs where I go out and do video for people's performances and stuff. So yeah, I think so.
Okay, sweet. That's one of the reasons why it's done. It's just, how can you fit where you need to fit at the present time? Because if composers were solving problems, they need something to help out their story. Well, what if they're not at that stage yet? Because as you know, as you and others will know, oftentimes they don't hire composers till the last minute and their budget's shot. You learn real quick, those are the people you don't want to work with. But that's why you try to move in earlier with production. I'm like, oh sure, yeah, I could do that. I could do work on this production, or hold the mic, or oh yeah, your dialogue was terrible there. Yeah, I'll use isotope and just clean this up to help you out. It's just, you need to put yourself in people's minds of, oh yeah, Mirabel, when I first think of Mirabel, I think of someone who helps. Not someone who's looking for a job. You never want to look like you're looking for a job. Even if you're not working, you're still actively working. It's nobody wants to hire somebody who isn't working. And it's the old adage, if you want something done, get a busy person.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because there's a reason why they're busy. There's typically a reason why others aren't. That's who you're looking for. You're looking for people who you otherwise might think won't have time for you. But that kind of made it sound like that person is a jerk. What I mean is, you're looking for busy people. Like, you're looking for people whom otherwise you might think you're bothering them. You're not looking for people who are totally approachable, I guess.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Yeah.
So squeeze it in, and this is where you learn to be efficient. Economy of words, learning to write short emails, polite emails, learning to be friendly, supportive, communicative, but concise. Move the train along.
Yeah.
Move things along. Know when to walk away, but know when to ride or die. So, but it's all different. It's yeah. I'll stop there. There's so much. There's so much, Maribel.
How do you decide when a film is worth it to work on? If, say, they don't have a lot of budget to allocate to music, how do you decide that's something that you want to do? Or you just don't whatsoever?
Well, I'm now at the stage of my personal growth where I feel as though it's okay for me to now say, if there's no budget, I want nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just don't bother. There's too much to do, too much going on. Because usually people who don't have a budget also don't know how to organize, and they're going to waste your time as much as they're wasting their own. And they're just always indicators. Look for indicators. Maybe somebody's super great to work with, but they're terrible at paying you. As in they're terrible at paying you when your invoice tells them to pay you. Or maybe they're just awful people who are poor communicators, but that next day, that invoice is paid. Right? And primarily it's the message. Is the message worth it? But also, because if you're working for free, you're just not going to be valued. If they don't have a budget, even if they're so sorry,
Yeah.
you're not valued. And so just know that going in. You can still be nice and directors can still be nice and still be jerks. And so they're just little indicators about how you want to be treated. And I think a lot of composers and independent composers are conditioned to be treated like garbage, to be stepped on. We're used to being at the tail end of stuff. And there's a lot of negative conditioning that goes on, I think, with composers. And then you tack on how much would a disability contribute?
Right.
Self-worth, personal growth, professional growth, social stigmas, shame, all that stuff can add up. And so that speaks to urgency. I have no time to suffer fools. I want to get a lot done, and I'm looking for people who want to get stuff done. But that took a lot of years, Maribel. It took a ton of years of understanding, okay, I'm a composer. I have a visual impairment. Not everybody knows that, so when do I disclose that? And then I have to fight for what I think my value might be. But since I'm not so experienced, or stuff takes me longer because I'm visually impaired, maybe I shouldn't charge so much. And then that director sees, oh, that's Steve. I can count on him. And he doesn't charge so much. I wish he had more self-esteem, but he sure charges a lot less than I'm willing to pay him. And then they see you as the mark. They see you as the sucker. And they'll always come to you for the cheap stuff, but they'll never give you that when they finally get the 8-figure deal. You will not be a part of that if you don't know how to understand your own value, your own worth. Right.
Yeah. Telling people like how much you would charge for a project is also, it's something it feels really hard to figure that out. Yeah, like how you were saying, like with your self-esteem and everything, I think it's easy to lowball ourselves But obviously we don't want to do that. But we also don't want to project it too high, and then they might think you're so full of yourself and you're not actually worth that much.
But they don't know that. You do. It's like you price yourself where you think you should be, but it's well, let me ask you this. Have you asked the other composers on your show what they charge?
I have not.
Has any composer ever volunteered what they charge?
No.
How hard has it been for you to understand what competitive rates are?
It's been, yeah, it's not talked about very much. And you do, I think, have to ask others, and if they're willing to share, you know, their experiences, then that's how you kind of find out. And yeah.
Well, in my experience, a lot of people are quite cagey about sharing their rates.
Exactly.
And I think that's stupid. It's all gatekeeper bullshit. So obviously, well, I'll start with this because I'll tell you.
Okay.
You know, when people ask me what my rates are, obviously the key is you flip it back on them. You say, well, what's your budget? You know, and then they say, well, we got $1,500 and like it's like a 20-minute short film. And you have to weigh that out. And okay, well, that's a lot of time mixing, whatever. And that's like, ooh, $2 an hour. Right? Everybody has those fights and everybody has to find their number. And for a while, I was like $100 per finished minute of music. And then I bumped that to $200 per finished minute of music. And now I'm at $400 or $500 per finished minute of music. Because that way, you know, on a decent budget, that's, you know, 30, 35K. But you don't always get that.
Yeah.
That's my rate where I am valued. That's where I have valued myself and with people in the industry. I mean, I had people in the industry just the other day say, oh my God, you need to charge more. You know,
oh, yeah.
In the industry. I was like, well, you know, $300-$400 sometimes, you know, I'll charge if it's a commercial thing, like I'll up it up to $500-$600, because that's what you do for commercial projects too. Just add 20% onto your rate. That just know that. Like I know
why.
Because it's commercial and they have more money, and that's just what you do in the commercial space. It's just I don't know why, but like so a buddy of mine is a cinematographer, and his day rate for like just like projects is about $800. But when he does a commercial shoot for like a Target or something, his day rate is $1,200.
Yeah. Okay.
It just there's a premium on commercial work. For independent or studio stuff, that's pretty strict. That's pretty rigid. It's I also ask them, okay, well, what's your budget? They come back, and because there's two types of budgets. There's a composer's budget for the fee for their time, and then there's the musician budget for hiring people like Mirabelle to come and play on it. So you ask them, well, what's your budget for music? Okay, you know, what's your budget for live music, and what's your composer's fee? Like, what's your budget there? And oftentimes they're going to have no idea, and that's a big warning. So yeah, I do my best to get between $300 to $600 per finished minute of music. That's from writing to hiring my team to having it mixed, and I give it off to the editor through WeTransfer or Dropbox or whatever it is, and I'm done. Like that is finished product. Like $300 to $600 per finished minute. Now that changes if they have a budget for live music, or it depends. Like, hey, well, we've got $25,000 for this. And they say, here it is. Do what you will with it. You know, we don't want to deal with it. Then out of that $25,000, I might only take home $8 because I'm going to spend $10,000 on live musicians, and I'm going to spend a couple grand on hiring a separate mixer, and maybe a couple grand on a sound designer to do some cool stuff that I don't know how to do that I think the film needs. So, but that's me. Like it's an all-inclusive type thing if I can help it. Yeah, I just upgraded my BIOS
Ooh.
this morning because I have this RAM that I want to get back up to 5600, and like it's just stuck at 5200, and so like every few months I'm like, I'll risk it. I'll update my BIOS and see if I get the best RAM speeds.
Did you build a custom PC?
Yeah. It did. It was a lot of years of waiting to be able to do that. And I went, oh, out. Last year, I had a great film I did about bicycling, about cycling across America with blind bicyclists. And
Oh, wow.
the budget was good. And I said, all right, I've been doing this 11 years or 10 years at the time. Like, I am finally buying my dream machine. And so I didn't care. 12900K, and I got 128 gigs of Kingston Fury 5600 RAM and all that nerd out stuff. And I got an MSI motherboard, and I've got just a bonkers loads of SSDs. I've moved off of hard drives and all. The only thing I do are NVMe drives.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, but after so many years, I finally was able to buy what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
But it's not even near the price of a Mac. So it wasn't that expensive. And I only use like a 3060. So even my graphics card it's just a typical graphics card. But so I built it. And I knew nothing about computers. And as a blind person trying to put a computer together,
Oh, wow.
I was like, you know what? I'm up for a little torture. Let's just, let's learn a new skill.
Dang.
And so I did, and thankfully it worked. But yeah, now I keep updating my BIOS, and I think I'm going to stop now. But do you build computers?
I do not, but I've been thinking that I would love to get a custom PC built because I'm running everything off of this gaming laptop right now, which, it's holding up pretty well. But every time I do anything, like if I stream, if I'm editing, if I've got a heck ton of plugins going on in my DAW, it sounds like it's about to take off. So the fan is going, it's going. So yeah, looking into it. But yeah, it is, it gets expensive.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've spent many times more on software than hardware. That's for sure. It's so daunting, and I mean that's why I started Able Artists Foundation, was because, just because you're disabled doesn't mean you're low income. And 1 in 4 people are disabled or have a disability. There are plenty of wealthy people who have disabilities, but at the time I started AAF because at the time I was very, very low income. And I thought, well, if it's this hard for me to buy just a few basic pieces of software, let alone the DAW and the keyboard, of course I'm not seeing anybody else like me in Hollywood. Nobody can afford it. And so that's why I started Able Artist Foundation, was to specifically support low income people with disabilities. So if you have a disability and you're on SSI or SSDI or your country's equivalent, because we have members from 30 different countries. So you can become a free member of Able Artists Foundation and get whatever you want from our partners for half off. And that saves people money, but at the end of the day, it gives people time. I want to give people their time back because they're not too busy saving and waiting for stupid Black Friday to finally buy stuff. That's years off your life when you're waiting for that crap.
Right. How do you join the Able Artists Foundation?
You go to ableartist.org /register, and it's an email verification. And then the second and last step is you upload your picture ID and your SSI, SSDI, DLA, PIP, pension, whatever your disability paperwork is for funding. So as in, like, if you get benefits as a result of having a disability or whatever you want to call that, that's the paperwork we need to see to then approve you for membership, because we don't want anybody to take advantage of this discount system.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's half off everything. It's not select stuff off of Spitfire's library. It's everything.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, BBC Orchestra, instead of $1,000, it's $500. You can get that in June as well as January. It's when you are ready, because I want to provide disabled people with autonomy. A lot of decisions get made for people that shouldn't be by non-disabled people. They like to make decisions for disabled people. They like to talk down to disabled people. They like to put barriers around disabled people, let alone under other underrepresented groups, and they just put you in this box, and that's where you stay. And everything I do my best to provide autonomy for a disabled person, to provide time for them, because things might take a little longer. So it's more of an existential, if you can remove the barrier of finances, you increase the time with your tool, which increases the amount of time you can have towards having a chance to succeed as a musician or as a composer. So it was more of an existential, like, we need to support some people because Hollywood has done a terrible job, or just hiring people with disabilities.
When did you start Able Artist Foundation?
Technically, we launched in 2017, but like our first discount wasn't provided until 2018. We're celebrating our 5th year anniversary on like February 27th.
Wow.
This year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
It's blossomed. Like I didn't expect it to be what it was. Like I had the idea for Able Artist Foundation. I was living in Denver, and I was in a car with my buddy Nate, and we were driving down I-25 outside of Denver, and we came to a stoplight, and the idea popped into my brain about discounts for disabled people like me.
Yeah.
And that's when the work began. And so that was even back in like 2013. So like I'd been mulling around with this idea for years, and then finally in 2017, I'd had enough, and I just had to do something.
It's amazing.
I think so. We're kicking a lot of butt. We're supporting a lot of composers. We're getting people work with some studios. We're getting people jobs. I just got someone hired today from AAF to work on a show reel for a VFX studio out in Hollywood. So cool. Yeah, we're getting people work.
How did you go about getting these partnerships?
I would go to a website like, let's take, we have 46 partners. What I would generally end up doing is I would just go to their website, I would scroll down to the bottom, I would find a contact email or a 1-800 number and just see how high up the tree I could get. Chances were I could get to who exactly I needed to, because one, not a lot of people actually do that.
Yeah.
Because for some reason people think there are barriers where there are none. And two, I wasn't asking for anything for myself. So I got to ask on behalf of an organization that I started, but I wasn't asking Spitfire to give me half off all their libraries.
Right.
Like, I don't get free stuff. Even though I'm the director and we've given out like over $300,000 in discounts and grants for all of these tools, it's like I'm not benefiting from like Like Orchestral Tools isn't calling me up and saying, hey, we got this new Salu library. You've kicked us a lot of business. Here's a free sample. That does not exist. If I were a reviewer, I'm sure they'd toss me a copy. But this is business. And just because we're supporting Orchestral Tools, Spitfire, all these people are providing all these major discounts, that doesn't mean there are kickbacks. Because it's business, and they understand it. I understand it. I forgot your original question.
Just how you got these partnerships.
Oh yeah, you just call them. Say, hey, like, I support this group. This is what I'm doing. I'm a disabled composer, and I'm looking to support other composers with disabilities all around the world. I have an email that took me a couple years to really refine, but. I mean, our first partner was Cinesamples and Mike Patty.
Oh, wow.
That took me a couple years to gather up the courage, because I would follow him on Periscope, if anybody remembers Periscope. And I would watch his YouTube videos, and that's when I thought all of these, heads of sample library companies were untouchable. Like, I just thought, oh, they're amazing. Oh, Christian Henson, Mike Patty, oh, they're, they're gods. Oh, how could I ever reach out to them? We're like, nope. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. Like, it's just more simple than people realize. But again, it's not. But it wouldn't have happened if I wanted something for myself. That's when they shove you to customer service. When you're asking for nonprofit base or something on behalf of something else, right to the top. Right to the top. Chances are you'll get there. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, just there aren't as many barriers in this world as people realize when it comes to stuff like this.
Yeah, we definitely we're in our own heads a lot more.
Yeah, and we don't need to be. We need to get into their heads. So they hire us or they partner with us.
This is true.
They're like, they understand Mirabelle's awesome. She understands her value. Let's give her full rate.
Yeah.
You
hear that? Yeah. Also, like, I found that with getting people on this podcast as well, like, I'm not paying you guys. You guys are giving me so much of your time, and that's amazing. But like, I was so scared to ask the first couple of guests because I was so afraid of getting rejected and getting no's for answers. But a lot of the time I haven't actually gotten I gotten a no once, but it's just like the timing didn't work out. So I asked again a couple months down the road and it worked. So yeah, it's just reaching out and just making the first move is okay. It can be okay.
Yes, it's okay to make the first move. Yep.
It's okay.
It's like,
it's not that scary.
No, and you're right. Fear of rejection is something that we all work with, and especially musicians and composers who may or may not be the most gregarious type of outgoing people. But we're also I personally love one-on-ones, and that's where I'm comfortable. I'm not as comfortable in big groups, even though I can stand in front of, as you saw, a bunch of people, and I love it, and I could enjoy being a public speaker. But I much prefer one-on-ones like this. Like, I seriously set aside as much time as I could at VIFF with each and every composer who wanted to talk. I spent that time wherever I was, whenever it was, in a public place, give them the time that they needed to ask what they felt they wanted to ask. Because one thing I learned that I've done is it's like there's a lot of validation that younger composers, including myself, and I still do. I do look for validation, and I noticed like a lot of the questions that people were asking at the Michael Abels concert,
right?
Every single one of those questions was from composers who were looking for validation about their own process. I was just sitting there. I was like, okay, Michael Abels will say, yes, that's an affirmative way to go. Because everybody's worried about wasting time. They're worried about doing it wrong. and not one question had to do with like Michael Abels or whatever. It was about process.
Right.
And that is that fear of rejection mentality. That's where that comes from, or that's part of it. And so somehow we have to get around that, and you did. And now we are peers, Mirabelle. We are musicians. We are composers. You are doing a great show. You are giving me an opportunity to come on your show and talk about whatever we want, including my work that's important about disability justice in Hollywood. And, you're getting another show with a composer who's hopefully providing a reasonable amount of quality for your listeners, and we are peers, and you have every right to be here just like everybody else does. And it's like for people with disabilities, this is another thing that I think, well, especially people with disabilities need to get over, is gratitude. There's this sense, and I've heard it multiple times, about, oh yeah, give that job to a disabled person because they'll be super grateful.
Oh.
And like they'll work extra hard because they're grateful. And I've heard that numerous times. And what happens is well, yeah, because I have felt that way, where I need to be grateful for everything because I am living in a world designed for sighted people. And so when something works in the world, I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Oh, this worked. This was easy. Oh, thank goodness. Whatever this is in this world, like, oh, my Apple Pay worked. I didn't even have to look at my phone. Like, sweet. I'm so grateful this worked. That type of approach in social conditioning, just from living in the world, can put itself onto what it's like as a professional too. Oh, I'm grateful for this job. Thank you. I'm not going to fight on your low budget. I'm just grateful to have it. And then they can take advantage of you. And
yeah.
And so part of my role, or one of the challenges that I want to combat, and this is for non-disabled composers as well as disabled composers, stop being grateful. And I half mean that tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of, I don't know, like there's a sense when people are coming up, like they're trying to be too obsequious, too thankful. Stop saying thank you all the time. Say it once. Hey, thanks for the interview. I really appreciated it. Looking forward to the next time if we can talk. Take care. You don't have to say it multiple times. You don't have to. It's just you don't have to. You provide respect, courtesy, all that good stuff, but gratitude gets in the way of progress. And I need to think that out a little more because I was talking to my dad the other day over lunch, and he's a pastor.
Oh yeah.
And so he's big into theology, reading theology, and I was talking to him about, Dad, I'm kind of pissed off at the Bible. And he's like, well, why is that, Steve? I said, well, because it's like super ableist, and I'm tired of being considered one of the least of these. And we don't need to go down this religious path so much, but I don't know if you're Christian or not, but in the Bible there's a lot of least of these talk. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor. Oh, let's make the blind person see. Oh, that person can walk again. I'm like, screw you, Bible. I'm not broken. I have a disability. I'm not less than. It's like and so we had this it was a fun debate,
Good.
about, faith isn't good to disabled people, and how that gratitude and being grateful within the church can also convert into gratitude as a disabled person in just society. And those two things working, actually, I'm kind of thinking about this off the top of my head right now. I'm combining two ideas I've had previously. The addition of humility within the church and gratitude of people with disabilities at whatever scraps they're given socially in the world, having those two elements superimposed on what is now a career in film where there are very few, if any, composers with disabilities who actually talk about it, let alone there is no path into this industry that anybody can follow that's like everybody else's.
Yeah.
All those things can compound onto one another. And so no wonder so many people quit.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder so many people call them, or, you know, we consider ourselves composers, but we work on one thing a year. It's like, because there's so many. So I have a real biased disdain towards humility. And I think part of that is because of everything I just laid out. I had been that way for far too long. And now I am grateful for when I need to be or when I want to be. Yeah. I'm humble when people, when I feel I should be. It's reading the room. It's kindness and courtesy will get you further than gratitude and humility will in this business. Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of battle with that, but.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, especially with how you just laid everything out. Yeah, I could see how what you're saying about too much gratitude. It's almost as if like when you repeat something so many times, the meaning gets lost. It takes away from the meaning of it and all that's behind it. Yeah. Yep.
It's like you're telling your partner telling you that they love you 10 times a day.
Yeah.
How about you just tell me once? Boy, it's going to mean a lot when you tell me that once, you know, said it 10 times. And I just kind of have to, I don't want that to be muscle memory for you or for me, you know? And so neither should gratitude. It's a disservice to gratitude to be so gracious.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you're grateful for. And, you know, I mean, you could be grateful for lots of other things that might not be, you know, in the way that you just talked about it, I guess.
I don't know. I was just like, if you say thank you too much, people think the conversation's done. Thank you is as good as saying goodbye. And so you don't want to say thank you very often. You want the conversation to continue. So it's almost like thank you is being used as a crutch to, well, that's an ableist term. It's using thank you as a way to say goodbye because you're uncomfortable. And I think over.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks.
Yeah. There's a lot. I don't know. What else? We're kind of gone down some interesting paths I didn't expect to go, which is great.
Also, we were talking about validation a little bit, and one of my Patreon questions comes from Phoung, who asked, "How do you feel about the way your creativity is being experienced by others? How do you react to criticism or praise? And what emotions are involved?" I guess that was like a lot of questions in one. Sorry.
Validation. You know, it's hard because, you know, you've done well when nobody has anything to say. That's kind of the subtractive nature of underscore. You've done your job if nobody complains. But that also means you may not get as many compliments as you would like. Like I don't. Like I still question, do I even write good music? I mean, I've got imposter syndrome all over the place, but it's not a humble brag. It's like, it's a serious question. Like, I've written music for like, okay, the number sounds bigger than it actually is. I've probably provided music for about 200 short films, features, documentaries, right? Most of those are shorts. So I'm not trying to blow myself up here. again, there's that humility that we do to ourselves. Like, yeah, worked on a lot of stuff. Be proud of that, Steve. But like, I don't have any stuff on soundtracks. My stuff's not on Sony. I don't have any of my music as licensable material. Like, I don't have it streaming on Netflix. Like my music's or streaming.
Spotify.
Yeah, like I don't have record deals. I'm literally job to job, gig to gig. If it gets distribution, sweet. But what I'm concerned about is the paycheck from that director, producer at the end of the day and moving on to work on the next project. And so, to be honest, I still don't know if my music's all that great. I think I'm competent. I think every once in a while I can whip out a killer melody that is just on point and people are just humming that and they love it. But I know most of my stuff is, it's fine. It's good. It's fine. And that's sometimes all people need it to be. So validation is tough. I would definitely say you get it in other areas of your life other than composing. Because even with my disability work, my advocacy work, it's hard to tell if you're doing any good. It's hard to tell, like, oh yeah, so like we just worked to, me and this other group I work that I founded, we worked with the Recording Academy to make the Grammys more accessible. Live audio description, ASL interpretation, a nice usable ramp for wheelchair users, all that stuff. And you still don't know, like, where's the validation? Because people are watching it over broadcast. They're not emailing you to say, thanks for doing this specific thing. You have no idea. It is out into the ether. And so I think you need to be real self-aware and understand where your own confidence comes from. Because if you're looking for validation in this business, wrong business. It's just, you got to love it because you love doing it and that you can work on yourself. But don't expect directors who don't understand the language of music in the first place to be truly appreciative anyway.
Yeah.
So long as the check clears and you dig working with that person because they treat you as a peer, that's cool. Like, that's validation. Do you have a working relationship? I am friendly with a lot of people. I don't have friends in the industry. And that's why I always laugh when, like, oh yeah, I have this friend and this friend, this friend. Like, no, you don't. You met them at a party. Like, no, I am friendly with so-and-so. We don't talk very often, but I have these great working relationships with people, and that's my validation there. I don't know if that answers all the questions, but
yeah. How then? How do you kind of check your ego at the door when you're working with a director? Maybe the director doesn't want to use the music that you made for this specific scene or something. If they have notes to give you.
Let me ask you this, Mirabelle. Are you intimating that I seem to come across a little arrogant or conceited?
No, I'm thinking that I'm just coming from, like, I personally would, struggle a little bit if I have struggled a little bit with receiving criticism, or like it's constructive, or it can be, and it's nothing against me personally, but I often will take things personally if I don't take an extra step to realize this. And so I'm just wondering if maybe that has happened to you or anything.
I want you to explain a little more about you. Like, are you saying if you realize this, can you say what you just did again?
Well, like, I guess an example would be, because I studied flute in school. I went to study music in school. And so like you have private lessons, weekly lessons, and you go in and you receive feedback of your playing and stuff. And so like it's not a personal attack on you or anything, but I think there was a point in time where like that's how I felt. Like I felt like the feedback was pointing to me personally, not like the flute and the music, but it is really just about the music, right? And it's a separate thing from me as a person.
Well, yeah, they're not. I mean, ideally, you're working with a tutor who's not attacking you.
Yeah, yeah. And they definitely weren't. It's just like, you know, I have felt that way though sometimes. Like,
well, why do you think that is? I mean, why do you feel personally attacked, even when they're very apparent that they're talking about the music?
I think maybe because we wrap ourselves up we identify ourselves in our work sometimes, and we're not separate.
I get what you're saying, and to be honest, that's how I identify myself. Like, I am a composer who does disability justice work. That is who I am. Like, my job is who I am, and I know there are back and forths about whether that's good or that's bad, but I love what I do, so I don't care.
Fair enough.
Well, see, this is my biased perspective as a disabled composer. Because, like, I would think if someone's looking for validation or if trying not to take things too personally, that to me says that there isn't enough balance in someone's life then. If it is strictly music that you're seeking validation from, then I would think that there needs to be other areas in one's life that there should be attention paid. And I mean that as, it almost sounds like one would be using music to hide within, which is something we all do. I mean, I hide within my music too. Like sometimes like the melody says it better than any words can, right? So I'm not excluding myself from this group. But it sounds to me that if there's too much of that going on, that there needs to be some health spent somewhere else, some way with diet, with exercise, with verbal communication with somebody, hugging a friend, affirmations, because this is a business. It's like, it is such a hard question. Because like even I mean, I have imposter syndrome right now. I was just having a conversation about imposter syndrome 2 days ago with my friend Abby, because I was freaking out at, like, I had some very, very, very important meetings.
Oh yeah.
And I had 5 of them within 2 days. And I was nervous. I was so nervous. I'm like, but I've been here before. I've done it before. And it was like, no, I've earned the right to be here. I've worked so hard. And I think the key is, when you're ready, you won't need someone else to tell you you've worked hard enough to know you belong there. And I have gotten to that point in some areas, but still, sometimes I feel like I don't belong some days, but it's more often than not. Now, I'll tell you what, it actually happened. The switch flipped in October after my trip to VIFF.
Yeah.
After 10 years of working as a composer and then doing disability advocacy for like 6 years, that's how long it took until October, after I got home from the VIFF AMP trip, where I realized I belong. I belong in these rooms with Tony. I belong in these rooms with so-and-so. I understand it's okay for me to feel comfortable here. But it took 10 years. It's not easy, and I still kind of feel like an imposter. And I was like, just like I just said, I felt like I belonged back in October for months, but even 2 days ago, I felt like an imposter going into these rooms where I knew I belonged. Yeah. So that's why it goes back to what we were first talking about. There's just no one answer. You have to constantly be working on yourself. Just like don't just get used to using Spitfire tools. Like, branch out and use some some of the unfinished stuff, or some of the rasped sounds, or learn how to use synths from Audible Genius, and like get yourself uncomfortable to keep learning your skill set, and listening to stuff that you're uncomfortable with, like infectious grooves or like psychedelic funk from the 80s, like stuff that's totally outside of your wheelhouse, because you're trying to push yourself. That's how it should be with your personage too. But honestly, I'm spending a lot of time on this question because I think it's really important, and there is some fragility out there. I do admit, I think there's some fragility out there, but also kind of justifiable, because it's not a nice industry, and it has not been kind to underrepresented groups. And like, here's the, as you may know, the film composers, it's mostly run by a particular subset of of people.
Yep.
And I believe in intersectionality and in supporting underrepresented groups. And so how do you know you're welcome?
Yeah.
How is it to understand that I have a disability, but I also look like every other composer out there, right? And like, but I have a disability, so I actually don't fit there either. So I have to work on my own validation too. But I think that's part of the social structure, and understanding and appreciating who we are on multiple levels, not just as musicians, but we owe it to ourselves, especially as people, if we are a part of an underrepresented group, to understand that we must love. Oh, this sounds so corny. We got to love ourselves. We got to understand it's okay for us to be in the room. We belong in the room. You belong in the room. Restrict the amount of gratitude. Restrict the amount of humility. But always be courteous, be kind, be a team player, be the Mirabelle that when somebody needs something done, they know they can turn to Mirabelle because they know they're going to get it done. And then they might call you to play flute on something, or might call you on to set for some other reason. But it gets you in the door because they know you can be counted on.
Yeah.
I think that's where validation comes from. Not that they call you the first time, but they call you the second.
Ooh, I like that.
That is the type of validation that I'm looking for. The second or the third call.
Amazing. We got another Patreon question from Chris. You've scored for a wide variety of films, ranging from shorts to documentaries to feature films. What are some of the different creative challenges you've faced when it comes to composing for these different types of projects?
Well, it depends on the project. It depends on, this is where the needs assessment that every composer should do every time they're being interviewed for a job. Because a question like that, I understand why it's being asked, but that type of question indicates to me that Chris may not have enough experiences being interviewed to understand, oh, okay, well, it's this type of film, so I'm going to ask these sets of questions, right? That's what it sounds like. It's not a bad thing. It's just, there's a lack of experience to be able to answer that. So,
oh, yeah. By the way, these patrons they're not necessarily musicians. So they're just interested.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. That's when you come up with your own set of questions for whatever it is. Because if you don't know the answer, you get the other person to talk. Like Chris just asked me a question. So now I'm the person talking to give them the answers. That's exactly what Chris should be doing in an interview. If you don't know something, when in doubt, turn it around and ask an open-ended question to the other person. Tell me about this short film. Tell me about this documentary. What have you worked on in the past? This is why just like in Hollywood, people in Hollywood research the bejesus out of you. You should be researching the bejesus out of them. because a lot of those questions will be answered. Seriously, I go into a lot of interview or a lot of meetings where there is practically a dossier on who's going to be there, what their role is, what the agenda is, CTAs, calls to action. Like, there is this stuff laid out so that you can get the topsoil questions out of the way so you can get to the meat of the matter. And so that comes down to asking questions, because then the answers, they will tell you the answers. If you don't know, other people will tell you what you need to know. You just need to learn how to ask open-ended questions, not yes-no questions. Tell me about your film. Tell me about your experience on this film. Why'd you write this film? They might tell a story about, well, such and such, and I fell on this chair and the chair broke, and like the wood splintered all over the place, and I made this horrible crash sound, and I had to spend months designing my own chair, and so I'm making a film about making a wooden rocking chair. But then, like, you as a composer might say, oh, so I'm going to go grab a bunch of wood, bang on it on some microphones, maybe bust some stuff open, use some cracks for some, and dump it into a sampler and make some sounds of busting wood, like on a chair, cracking stuff over your knee and turning that into sounds to enhance that part of the story of the film that's not necessarily, may not be in the film, but it's a part of the makeup of how the film was being made based on a personal experience. And so how do you make whatever it is unique to you, to the score? You just ask open-ended questions. And then if you don't know, it's okay to ask them. Say, if you don't know the answer to something, don't waste your time wondering if it's this and this and this. Ask them. Be willing to look a little foolish so you don't waste a bunch of hours and then get mad at yourself for not asking what you should have weeks or months earlier on a project.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris also asked who or what are some of your key inspirations?
My main inspiration is Rachmaninoff, Sergei Rachmaninoff. For non-music people, he was the 19th century, early 20th century Russian romantic composer. And I love him and his music. And I grew up playing a lot of his piano stuff. That's my jam. Composer-wise is James Horner, and then after that it's John Powell. But outside of that, honestly, I don't listen to a lot of film music.
It seems like a lot of people don't listen to the type of music that they make, or like that's part of their work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, example, I'm a big fan of a metal band called Lorna Shore. I'm also a big fan of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So it's like I like my angry dinosaur metal, death metal, as much as I love my angsty romance songs. And I was just, God, she has this one song like dun, 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 sexy baby, and she says sexy baby line. I'm like, and I think of it's awful because I think of this show back in the late 90s, early 2000s called Ally McBeal, where they have this dancing baby. It's like one of the original types of screen-generated 3D images that they put into like live action TV. And it's just a dancing baby. And it's the most obnoxious thing that they did 20 years ago. And so whenever I hear that line from the Swift song, I'm like, not Ally McBeal, not Ally. I'm just like, not a legal show from the 90s.
Oh, no.
But
no.
Anyway.
All right. Last question to wrap up this podcast. Because it is called Making It. What does making it mean to you?
Well, I currently feel fulfilled. Maybe there's a difference between making it and feeling fulfilled. But like I feel, okay, I have never worked on a studio feature film. So like I've never worked on a film from Sony or Apple. I've been looked at for stuff, which is really cool to know. But all of my film success has come from independent film, which is brutal. That's independent film is super hard. Well, so is studio film. I shouldn't say that. Okay, so I'm sure studio films are just as hard as independent films. Like it's just they all have their own struggles. I'm not saying this properly. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think even though I've had multiple award-winning films, done some cool stuff as a result of music in the industry, like I would consider that having made it. But in my eyes, I still think once I score like an Apple original film, that to me would be, okay, I guess officially I would say I would consider myself publicly as making it, right? Internally, personally, I'm already there. Like I've already made it. With the types of projects that I'm working on, the types of success that those projects have had, the impact those projects have had, because I work on a lot of social issue stuff. Like that's my favorite, is to work on meaningful issue films. That's why I love documentaries. The work is meaningful. It's being recognized. The pay isn't super great, but I'm making an impact. And that feels really good. So in that respect, internally, personally speaking, I believe I have made it, but publicly speaking, I have not. And I wouldn't say that until like I get like $100K for a budget for a film. That's because like my biggest budgets are like in the 20, 30,000 range. That's some straight up brass tacks information right there. So like that's like the most I've ever been given for like a full whatever. It's like between 20 and 30,000. But that is everything, like hiring all the musicians and have everything mixed and hiring an orchestrator and hiring assistants and all that. And so I take home a fraction of that. So I just want to keep that in mind. In the disability space of advocacy, I've made it. Like you end up in these same rooms with the same people, with entirely different reasons for being there. It gets to be kind of a smaller group when you know you're in a position to create effective change in the world. And that's when I think you can identify, okay, you may recognize you are doing some good in the disability advocacy space because you are coming across the same people and you know what they've done and you've researched them and you know they've done this and that. And if you keep coming across them and you're in the same rooms, like, well, okay, this must mean something and I must acknowledge that. Because I also think it hurts you if you don't acknowledge and affirm in areas you have made it. And this is why I think humility could get in the way of progress. I don't deserve anything, but I have worked real hard to be able to have access to certain things to encourage studios to do certain things differently. And to get people in the room to fully understand and know they understand why it's important that every film have audio description. Every film has captioning, and that you're getting so and so at such and such studio, that they are now actively looking for a disabled person to fill a certain role.
Yeah.
That's when you know you've made a difference. And that's why I believe Hollywood and disability is taking over. And the fear, the stigma, although is still quite there, it is less and less. And big time people are recognizing it and understanding how they can do better. And they are recognizable names. And it's like when you can get those recognizable names on board to be like, you know what, I'm going to do this next time. This was really helpful. Yeah. I'm going to, I'm not going to be scared of somebody with a limb difference, or I'm not going to be scared of hiring a wheelchair user. Like, it's removing that stigma. Disability is not a dirty word. Disability is a great word. There's who said this? It's like Neil Marcus. It's like, disability is an art. It's an ingenious way to live. And I like that because it's always operating in a world not designed for you. So you get to perpetually kind of be creative and just do things a little differently and train your brain a little differently, which is why I intentionally hire disabled people on my teams.
Oh, great.
I want people who think differently. I want people who talk differently. I want people who have different lived experiences, that some are some pretty bad experiences, some are all right. But some people who have to work in the same world as I do, that's just really challenging. Oh my gosh, all this inventiveness all on one team? Of course I want this. And it's conveying that to other people in the industry that, look, innovation isn't hard. Everybody's just been looking at the same places for innovation. When you've got a quarter of the population who's ready to go, who's going to blow your mind. So I think in the disability advocacy space, I acknowledge, and I'm pleased to say I do believe I have made it. But in the composing world, I'd still like to have a couple of things under my belt. And again, I'm in my 40s, and I started doing music when I was, film music when I was 33. So I got into it super late, and hopefully I'm doing this into my 70s and 80s. Like, I seriously do. I don't want to retire. So hopefully I could do this for a long time. So I've still got some time to publicly, officially make it. But inside, I think I'm doing all right.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And that's it.
Well, thank you, Mirabelle. I appreciate you asking me to come on and chat with you. And thank you for bringing me on.
Where can people find you online, or if they can listen to your music anywhere or anything, find out what you've worked on?
StephenLetnes.com. All of my, that's StephenLetnes.com. And those are all my handles too. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just Stephen Letnes, @StephenLetnes. Website, IMDb as my show reel. Ironically, my show reel is on IMDb, but I don't have it on my website.
Oh.
Which is kind of silly. But that's just, you just make silly mistakes. That's and then that's as far as the music goes. But as far as the advocacy stuff goes, I have 3 organizations. My primary is Able Artist Foundation. That is for disabled talent who receive federal benefits like SSI, SSDI, or their country's equivalent. And that gets you discounts on stuff. That's ableartist.org. There's oneinfourcoalition.org, oneinfourcoalition.org. That is, we're an intersectional group of working professionals in Hollywood, from talent agents and managers, directors, producers, Oscar noms, visual effects, composers, post-production, all those types of people. But we are working people in the industry, and we advocate for hiring more people with disabilities, making Hollywood more accessible, like more stages, more sets accessible, and authentic representation. So you don't hire Alec Baldwin to play a blind guy. You actually hire a blind person to play a blind guy, or a blind person. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then the last one is called Ramped, for recording artists and musical professionals with disabilities.org, ramped.org, rmpd.org. And that's specifically for the music industry, the Grammys, types of like live performance shows, musician specific, whereas 1 and 4 is all profession specific for Hollywood, and AAF is for composers specifically for the industry.
Amazing. Thanks again for coming on and sharing your experiences and everything. And you're doing a lot of amazing work. And like you've said, you're doing a lot of impactful work. And yeah, and I am now very aware of how often I'm saying thank you. So there's that.
I appreciate that you brought me on. And it was really nice to have a conversation with a fellow musician and talk about business stuff. And I appreciate you being interested, especially for a part of society that doesn't get enough attention, that needs more attention. People with disabilities, there are a lot of us out there. There are a lot of people in the industry. There are tons of people with disabilities in Hollywood. They're just afraid to talk about it. But I should say, more and more are becoming less fearful.
Good.
It is no longer, I think it's safe to say, you cannot use the blanket statement, people are afraid to talk, because that is changing now. Fewer people are afraid to talk. Or I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's totally backwards. More people are open to discuss and be open about their disability, because it's really not a big deal. It's just a part of a lived experience. So, more people are open about it, and that just makes it everybody more comfortable, as they should be, because it's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. But thank you for bringing me on. It was really nice chatting with you.
Hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe in October, right?
Yeah, maybe at VIFF again.
Maybe at VIFF. That's right.
All right. Talk to you later.
Take care, Mirabelle. Bye.